Andrea Berta is here and he's not wasting any time. Arsenal's new sporting director has already held talks with one of the club's summer transfer targets. We're going to break down that news and we're going to talk Joan Garcia too on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how are we? Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Do I look tired if you're watching this on video? I feel tired. It's been a really, really busy day. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have the work. I'm grateful to be constantly on the go, to get to do what I love. But my God, am I tired tonight. Let's hope that the football coming up a little bit later on this evening, because we are recording this at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. Let's hope that tonight's football keeps me awake and gets me going again. Will Liverpool drop points? Will the title race be back on? No, I'm just kidding. Regardless of whether they drop points or not, the title race is categorically done. Let's not allow ourselves to go down that path, because it's only us that are going to have our hearts broken at the end of the day. A big hello to everybody joining us in the live chat. Good to see you guys. I know we tend to get, obviously, the regular listeners and the regular viewers, but we also get a slightly different audience when we stream at different times as far as the live chat goes. So it's good to see some different names in there. Obviously, different times of the day suit different people in terms of the live streams. And look, we recorded a podcast this morning. We talked about the Fulham game. We talked about Saka's return. We talked about the Gabriel injury, the Timber injury. And actually, I had a couple of messages from some of you saying that was as kind of moany as you've been on a podcast maybe ever. And do you know what? It's not anything to do with the players. It's not anything to do with the team. It's not anything necessarily to do with the club. It's purely down to the fact that this season just really does feel cursed. And so I was a little bit down in the dumps this morning. I was struggling a little bit today. But as the day's gone on, I've had a really good day, really productive day, really busy day. And I was delighted to read a fantastic story from Ed Aarons of The Guardian, who I had the pleasure of getting to know a little bit over the last couple of days as well. And yeah, he puts out a really kind of positive story, and a story that I think will excite the vast majority of Arsenal fans. So shall we get into that story? I'm sure you'd prefer me to do that than continue rambling on. Let's jump into it now. What did Ed Aarons report with regards to the Gunners and one of their potential summer transfer targets? As per Ed Aarons of The Guardian, Arsenal are exploring a summer move for Athletic Bilbao's Nico WILLIAMS. Now, you might say, let me just pause for a second. Let me just hit the brakes. You might say, well, we knew that they were looking at Nico WILLIAMS anyway. So why is this a big story? Why is this a big deal? Why are you making something of this? Well, it's the detail in the article that for me shows some progress in our pursuit of this player, shows that we're serious about going to sign this player. And obviously, Andrea Berta features really heavily in this. So yes, it's been a long old recruitment process, but he is someone who we know has the track record, has the contacts, and it looks as though he's already cooking, as people used to say when referencing Edu. Got a bit of a sore throat, so let me just take a swig of my drink. Apologies. Right, Arsenal are exploring a summer move for Athletic Bilbao's Nico WILLIAMS. Andrea Berta has held talks with the Spain forwards representatives in one of his first acts as the club's sporting director. It is understood Berta, who was confirmed in his post last Sunday and attended Tuesday's 2-1 win over Fulham, has met the 22-year-old's agent, Felix Tainter. Arsenal have heavily scouted Williams for the past 2 years and are believed to have considered a move for him last summer, only to be informed that he wanted to remain at Athletic for another year. Williams, having started for Spain at Euro 2024 and having helped his boyhood club reach the quarterfinals of the Europa League, where they'll face Rangers next week, is expected to push for a move this summer. Barcelona, who also tried to sign him last summer, Bayern Munich and Chelsea are also believed to be in the race, with his release clause thought to be set at 58 million euros, 48.4 million pounds. Arsenal's long-term interest and the role of Berta, formerly sporting director at Atletico Madrid, could persuade him to move to North London. So Andrea Berta being proactive, Arsenal as a football club being proactive and going after someone that a lot of us have wanted to see the club move for quite some time. Now, in the past, I've expressed some concerns about Nico Williams, and I've kind of, I'll be honest, like I'm not going to deny, I've flip flopped a bit with Nico Williams. If you asked me prior to last summer what I thought about him, I would have said to you, I think he's someone that we could benefit from signing. I think he's someone that could add something that maybe we don't have. And as far as wingers go, it has felt like we've been a little bit light. I mean, for how long have we been talking about someone to come in to provide cover to Bukayo Saka? I think a conversation that has developed over the course of this season is, do we need a player that can come in and make the left side his own? At times, it's a role that's been shared between Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard. And although Gabriel Martinelli was very, very good against Fulham and actually looked like he was back to his best, generally his form has dipped. And the same can be said for Leo Trossard. So actually, the idea of going out and bringing in this left winger who could potentially hold down that position and make it his own and hopefully take the team to a next level, it's not a wild idea. It's something that we should be exploring. Is it number one in our priority list going into the summer? Probably not. Does the emergence of Ethan Nwaneri as an option on that right-hand side mean that Martinelli and Trossard no longer have to think about being cover for the right-hand side, which means they're now back to being specialist left wingers, which means that maybe we don't have a need there? I don't know. Look, there's a lot of talk about Leandro Trossard and his future. I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves this summer. Now, I'm not saying that I know that he will or that I've got any information, that suggests that. But when I looked at the sort of expiry dates of some of the contracts that we're hearing quite a bit about at the moment as matters of urgent need, Leandro Trossard, his contract expires in 2026. So he's going to have one more year on his contract come the end of this season. Therefore, it might be the right time to cash in on him. It might be the right time to let him go. He might want to move on because he might figure that, with Martinelli hopefully coming back to his best, that his minutes are going to be limited. And Leandro Trossard's too good a footballer not to be playing regularly. So, yeah, there's a chance that we lose him. I think we're certainly not going to keep Raheem Sterling. So that's another winger gone. So, yeah. It feels as though, we're in a position where going and getting another winger is something that we should at least explore and consider. And the thing that kind of gives me encouragement with Nico Williams, and listen, he's had an underwhelming season by the standards he set the season prior. There's no question about that in terms of numbers and outputs. And have I sat and watched loads of Nico Williams to be able to tell you if his all-round game has dropped off in terms of its level? No, I haven't. So I'd be lying if I sat here and said that. But I think for me, as I say, I've been through a bit of a journey with Nico Williams. At the beginning, I was kind of like, numbers look good, hot prospect, young player, room to develop, room to grow. Let's go and get him. And then I started to think about what we need. And actually, for me, looking at that left-hand side, I felt that with Trossard and Martinelli there wasn't really a need to go and bring in a left winger. And actually, there's probably more need to bring in a right winger. Now we've got Ethan Nwaneri. I feel like the need to bring in that player has reduced a little bit. And I'm starting to ask questions about Trossard and Martinelli, and I'm wondering if there's an upgrade out there. Now, if we're going to sit here and criticize Gabriel Martinelli, and again, he was great yesterday, but again, I've got to be fair then, right? Because if I'm saying that his numbers are underwhelming, and then I look at Nico Williams's, and I'm just going to bring those up on my screen just to make sure I'm giving you the accurate figures, because those figures form a big part of my argument here. At 22 years old, he's only got 4 goals in La Liga this season and 5 assists, okay? If I then have a look at Martinelli's numbers for this season, bear with me, my internet's going a little bit slower than I would have liked. He's got 6 goals and 4 assists. So they're very, very similar in terms of their outputs. And Martinelli's had to do it in the Premier League, and he's had to do it in a side that has had a really depleted attack. And he's had to, some would argue that actually being relied upon maybe puts you in those positions a little bit more often. I would argue that it makes his life a lot more difficult. But the point I'm trying to make here is that numbers-wise, This season, they're very, very similar. One's got 6 goals, 4 assists. One's got 5 goals and 4 assists, or whatever it is. So they're really, really close in terms of their outputs and numbers. So I can't sit here and say Gabriel Martinelli's had an underwhelming season and we should consider bringing in another left winger to try and raise that bar and raise that level. But then by that same token, say Nico Williams absolutely is that guy when their numbers are really, really similar. If I'm going to bemoan Martinelli's output, I have to be fair in my assessment of Nico Williams. Now, I say I've flip-flopped quite a bit on Williams because, as I said, there was a time where I looked at him from a distance and I thought that would be a great signing. Then I went for a period of time where I was watching bits and pieces of Nico Williams and I felt that he was still a little bit raw. And I felt like he was one of those players that, was a great dribbler, great carrier of the ball, brought you lots and lots in terms of that chaos that he can create, but produced very little end product. And I guess you could make that argument even today, looking at his numbers, with the amount of times he receives the ball, with the positions that he gets himself into, with the way that his team plays. In theory, there should be more coming from Nico Williams, numbers-wise, right? So I understand that. I understand why people would have that view and have that opinion. But I guess what changed my mind on Nico Williams and why I've probably been a little bit more sympathetic towards him and his underwhelming season so far in terms of outputs is I watched him live at the Euros in person, I think 3 times over the course of the tournament. And each and every time I was blown away by his directness, his mobility, his dribbling capability, scored some goals at the competition as well. And that really did shift my opinion on him. Then we come into this season and you're looking at him to kind of kick on and build from that. And that hasn't really happened. But for me, there's enough credit in the bank with Nico Williams to suggest that he'd be a good signing for Arsenal. And at 50 odd million euros, it doesn't feel like a ridiculous amount of money to go and spend on an attacker that's going to enhance, our forward line. The issue with Nico Williams is what happens in terms of salary. Now, we've talked a lot about potential departures this summer. I've mentioned Leandro Trossard as a possibility. Zinchenko's a possibility, big salary. Partey is a real possibility, big salary. Jorginho is a real possibility. I'm not sure what Jorginho's salary is or where in the kind of grand scheme of things it kind of fits in, but I'd imagine a player of Jorginho's experience is on pretty good money as well. So you think about Nico Williams and you worry about how much we're going to have to pay him. Now, Athletic Bilbao have a policy of playing Basque players only, players from their own region, which is great in terms of how it creates a connection between the fans and the players and all the rest of it. There's lots of positives to that. They're really focused on the development of players in their part of the world. And just, some people have said it's discriminatory and all the rest of it. I don't see it like that. I see that as I see that as a community wanting to see their community thrive, right? There's nothing to suggest that they've got any other agenda other than wanting their own to succeed. And that is fine, right? But because of that rule, because of that principle that they apply, they have to pay players over the top salaries. And the reason they have to pay these players over the top salaries is because what happens is their pool that they're able to shop in and they're able to recruit from is smaller. And so the less there is of something, the more valuable it becomes. And the more valuable it becomes, the more it costs. And, somebody like Nico Williams knows that he has Athletic Bilbao essentially by the cojones because they aren't going to find players of that level every day from that particular region because the net is so small. The net that they throw out there to kind of catch their players, it's so small. They're going to have to, try and hold on to the really talented ones when they come across them and when they find them. And so it's rumored that Nico Williams is on like 300,000 euros or so a week. Now, I don't know if that's true for sure. I couldn't tell you because I don't really know the intricacies of Athletic Bilbao's finances, nor should I really. But the point I'm trying to make is that he's on a big wage. So while the release clause feels reasonable, you've got to think about the other side of the investment. And I often say this, when you're looking at players as a football club, you're looking at two things. You're looking at what it's going to cost you to bring them in, but you've also got to look at the rolling ongoing cost. I don't know what the official term is. I'm sure there's an accountant in the chat somewhere that will give me a proper term for that. But it's an ongoing cost, right, for the duration of the contract that you sign them on. So let's say you sign Nico Williams on a 5-year deal. You're committing to paying him whatever amount it is that you agree, which you'd assume would be something similar, if not more, to what he's getting at Athletic Bilbao. You're agreeing to pay that money for a long period of time. That's fine. But the point I'm trying to make here is actually the wages and the salary are more of a strain on the football club than the transfer fee on a lot of occasions. And so it's not just about the fee. The fee feels fair. The salary we're going to have to pay him, in my opinion, feels a little bit excessive. And Damien has brought up Kai Havertz in the chat. He says Kai Havertz is on 300k plus. What's your point? I don't really understand what relevance that has with the point I'm making. Arsenal felt that Kai Havertz was worth that investment. They've signed Kai Havertz, and look how much we're bloody missing him. You know, and look how important a part he's become to the team. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not that 300k is too much to pay a player. If you want to be competing for the best honors and the biggest honors, you're going to have to be competitive in terms of what you pay versus other clubs that will be in the market for the same players. I'm not saying we shouldn't pay Nico Williams 300k. I'm saying that that is what the club will probably look at and focus on, maybe even more so than the release clause, because the release clause is something that you pay, you know, maybe in installments, maybe in one go. You know, I mean, I'd imagine that for the release clause to be triggered, you have to deposit all the money in one go. But is there going to be an agreement struck between the two clubs that's maybe a little bit different, but that still comes to the same amount, or maybe slightly more, so that we can spread those payments? I don't know, right? I don't know how that's going to work exactly. But the point I'm making is that that is a bigger consideration, I would imagine, a lot of the time than the transfer fee. A big corporation like Arsenal, a massive business like Arsenal, can raise money to do those deals in terms of transfer fees, can spread those costs over a long period of time. And that feels manageable. It's the salary stuff that I think gets clubs into trouble and has seen many clubs kind of dig themselves into a hole over the years. So, yeah, salary is a big factor here as well. But look, I think Nico Williams could potentially be someone that plays on that left flank for us for the next 5 or 6 years. And if Arsenal see him in that way, then they're probably going to be more willing to make that bigger investment in him. And they're going to be really invested in his development. And they're going to, they're going to want to get this deal done. Look, I just think it's really encouraging that we've got a new sporting director in. And within days, and I know people will say, oh, it's great PR from the club. Look, they're bringing Andrea Berta. They know we're not going to win the league. We've got injuries galore, more of them yesterday. People will say that this stuff is all coming out now because it shows us in a good light. And it's us as a football club maybe trying to take the edge off of what's been a disappointing season, going into the summer to build some excitement up and hopefully shift the mood back into the right direction ahead of the new season. Maybe there's an element of truth to that. Who knows, right? Who knows? I don't know where everybody sources their stories from. I couldn't tell you, okay? But what I can tell you is this. We are going to have a big summer because we have to have a big summer. This is not negotiable. There isn't a world in which Arsenal have a sort of quiet summer and it's accepted. It's not going to be accepted because a lot of people felt that January was a letdown, and I subscribe to that opinion. I'm of that opinion. I think the club were wary of doing a deal that was going to cause them a problem ahead of the summer, which suggests that they already had big plans for the summer. And sometimes it is right to keep your powder dry. Sometimes it is right not to be reactionary, not to be knee-jerk, and to do what's best in the longer term. But in this instance, with the injuries that we had, I felt that Arsenal needed to do something. And whether that was going out and bringing someone in on loan, or making a somewhat lesser investment, but just bringing in a player who was a specialist in the positions that we were missing, I thought we needed to do something. We didn't. And that was really disappointing. And what that does is increase the pressure now going into the summer. So the summer is one that Arsenal have to get right. And if you need to get it right, you need to be putting your pieces in place from now. You need to be having those conversations for now. You need to be exploring possibilities from now so that come the summer, you are in a position to execute. You don't want to spend the whole summer trying to convince someone to join. If you've got someone's buy-in going into the summer, then all you need to execute over the course of the off season is that deal between yourself and the selling club. And Arsenal have operated this way in the past. You think about how long we were in conversations with Declan Rice. You think about how long that move was in the pipeline. And then the summer came and there was a little bit of back and forth between Arsenal and West Ham. And it did take a little bit longer than maybe people wanted, but it was a really high value deal. Eventually they got the deal done. But once the two clubs were in a position to sign on the dotted line, there was no question mark about Declan Rice because we'd already got his buy-in and we'd already got his agreement. So this work is going to begin from now. And to hear that Andrea Berta is driving this shows me that he is aligned with the football club, because Nico Williams feels like he was a pre-existing target. So that's Andrea Berta picking up the baton from where Edu left off. And it shows that he's willing to do things that are aligned with Mikel Arteta. But then on the other hand, you've got the Victor Gyökeres rumours, which suggest, given that I believe Arsenal could have signed him previously if they really wanted him, it goes to show that actually Andrea Berta, yes, he's willing to follow on certain deals if he thinks they're the right deal, but he's also willing to try and take the club in a slightly different direction with other targets like Victor Gyökeres, who all of a sudden has become a real serious contender to come in and be our centre forward moving forward. So, yeah, we're seeing both sides, and we're seeing that really, really early on in his tenure, which shows me that A, he's pretty good and he doesn't mess around and he means business, but also B, that the club were probably still working on some stuff in the background, even in the period we were without a sporting director. Jason Ato was of course in that role on an interim basis. You know, it's understood that the club had tried very much with the structure around him to support him and give him what he needed in that role. And basically that work hasn't stopped. Work has continued. Work has, been ongoing. And Arsenal are now in a position where they're getting closer and closer and closer to being able to execute this summer the deals that they want to do. So, yeah, really, really, really good news coming out today. Look, it's not done. It's far from done. So don't count your chickens just yet. But obviously, it's great to hear that there's some proactivity. Arsenal Avenger says, big up, Harry. Like and subscribe. Please do leave a like on the video if you're watching us on YouTube. It really, really, really does help, guys. Let me check how many of them we've got. 1 second. Let me see. Hold on. Just having a quick look. Likes. We've only got 43 on the board. Come on. There's no reason why we shouldn't have 100. It doesn't cost a thing. Just smash that like button. It's really, really easy. And if you're listening to us on audio, whether that's Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. That really does help as well. Okay. Let's see what we've got. Archangel says, how much is Jesus on? Waste of money he's been. Jesus played a massive part in Arsenal getting back on track. And I'll always be grateful for that. Are we at a point now where when he gets back fit, we probably need to think about moving him on? Yeah, I think that's fair. But at the time, Jesus and Zinchenko were transformative signings, so they weren't mistakes. Have we evolved past them a little bit? Yes. But in Jesus's case, more so than Zinchenko, I don't think it's about him not being good enough to play an important role and a vital role in this side. I think it's more a case of his fitness has been a big problem. This is the second long-term injury now, and that has got him just at the point where you felt like he was getting back to his best. He had that remarkable run of goal scoring, didn't he, just before he went down, and now we've lost him again. And, you know, he's been really, really unlucky with the timings and stuff. But just like, this is the thing. This is why I never go massive on like certain signings and say waste of money, waste of time, because so many things can happen that are just out of your control. We talk about variables in football all the time on this podcast. Injuries. You can pick up a player that's got a sort of a spotless injury record, and then they can start suffering injuries left, right, and center. And you're sitting there and you're scratching your head and you're going, well, none of this came up in the medical, and none of this was flagged up in our research of his kind of history. So where on earth does this come from? It happens. And Jesus wasn't a particularly injury-prone player, not with serious injuries anyway, prior to his arrival at Arsenal. And he's come to Arsenal and he's getting serious injuries. It's just bad luck. But yeah, I will always respect Gabriel Jesus because I think he played a massive role in getting us up to the level that we're at today. PJ says we've done a lot of work to get our wage bill under control. Now is the time to invest in real talent at the club and from the outside. Yeah, I agree with that. It's a great point. Olaniyi says, I had a good look at the highlights of Nico Williams' skills today, and I saw a little bit of Ronaldinho. Even though Martinelli has shown some skills and capabilities as well, I think Nico plays more maturely. Yeah, look, in the early stages of Nico Williams' career, as I said, I felt he was a little bit raw, and I do feel he's improved in that sense. And I thought he was great at the Euros, really, really good at the Euros. Martinelli's good too, but look, first of all, we're going to need more than one left wing option because we've seen how our players are dropping like flies and the demands of the modern clubs at the top level right now. So look, I understand people making the comparison between the two, but I think there's a role for both of them. I don't think there's a role for both of them and Leandro Trossard, though, and it's why I think there's a chance that Leandro Trossard is moved on come the summer. You probably get more money for Martinelli because of his age, but I feel like Leandro Trossard's the more likely one to leave. What else have we got? Just scrolling through the chat. Mario says, Harry, hope you're well with all these injuries we've had. What do you put it down to? Is it too many games being played over a season, including games for their countries, for example? It's a combination of things. It's too many games. It's maybe pushing players too hard. It's bad luck. I think it's a combination of loads of things. I don't want to point the finger at certain individuals. One of the things, and we were talking about this on the radio earlier today with Flex, one of the things that really annoys me is when people go, oh, it's Arteta's fault. Okay, but why? Or is his training methods? How the bloody hell do you know what happens on the training ground? You don't. I'm lucky enough in my job to, on occasions, get to go to this kind of media bits around Champions League games where you see open training for a bit. It's about half an hour or so. You essentially watch the players come out, do their kick-ups and warm-ups and play a little fun game at the beginning, and then you got to leave. So you don't actually see the real business kind of chunk of the training session. You don't get to see that or witness that. So how the bloody hell does everybody know what Mikel Arteta's methods are, first of all, and secondly, that they're contributing to the injuries? You can suspect that, and you could think that might be the case, and that's fine. But it's when people definitively say it's this or it's that. And the truth is they don't know. They don't have a clue. Or they might tell you their sister-in-law's friend's brother's cousin works at the training ground and told them. That's the kind of nonsense. There's a guy I know who does that quite a bit. Every time I speak to him, it's like, yeah, I got someone very, very, very close. And I'm like, yeah, who is it? Oh, I can't reveal it, but, he's always there. Blah. Like, come on. We don't know. The answer is we don't know. Aubrey says, what I want to know is, will we finally get the striker we need? We really need the firepower up front. I think we will. I think we will get the striker that we want in come the summer. I think at the moment it looks like it could well be Victor Gyökeres. I think Benjamin Sesko is still an option. I still think Alexander Isak is something that we should at the very least explore. Is it realistic? Can we do it? Who knows? But I think that's one we should definitely be looking at, because if there's any possibility, he is the answer for me. Right, we're going to take a short pause, and when we come back, we're going to talk Joan Garcia, and then I'm going to take a few more of your questions and thoughts from the live chat. We'll be back right after this. Okay, Joan Garcia. Now, he's a goalkeeper that's been linked with Arsenal for quite some time. We talked about it a few days ago. Atletico Madrid are said to be in the mix for him as well, which might complicate matters for Arsenal because he's not going to be guaranteed to start at Arsenal. And by all accounts, based on all the things I've read about this goalkeeper, all of the kind of glowing reviews that are out there about him, you get the impression that he's good enough to be a number one. And so coming to Arsenal means being a number two. It means being second fiddle to David Raya. I think, when we had Ramsdale and Raya, Mikel Arteta could have rotated a lot more than he did, and he didn't. So whoever comes in, you have to assume is going to get very little game time. I think he was maybe making a point towards the end with Ramsdale, which meant that even when there was, in the eyes of the supporters, an opportunity to play him, he wouldn't. But then you look at this season, and I think the situation's a bit different. We've got Neto, who's coming on loan. He's been second choice to David Raya, but there is quite a significant drop-off in the level between those two. I'm not saying Joan Garcia is as good as David Raya, but if he doesn't have the potential to be, then what the hell is the point in signing him? Where I think the similarities are is in their style in terms of being comfortable with the ball at their feet. Maybe that will lead to the management feeling that the two are more interchangeable without it necessarily impacting on our wider game. I don't know. But Joan Garcia is said to have a release clause, as everybody does in Spain. And according to a report that I read earlier, he's got 30 million euro release clause that is currently active. If he gets called up by the national team, that clause goes up to 35 million euros. And if Espanyol are relegated, the clause becomes 15 million euros. Now, 15 million euros is 50% of the current release clause. So that would be a real advantage to us. Espanyol are currently 2 points above the relegation zone. So, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I wouldn't mind Espanyol getting relegated. They're 2 points ahead of Leganés. Alaves are sandwiched in between Leganés and Espanyol. Although Espanyol do have a game in hand over everyone barring Villarreal in the division. So there is a possibility that they win that game and they buy themselves a little bit more breathing space. But yeah, interesting because again, he's another player that we've seemingly been looking at for quite some time. And again, it will show us if Andrea Berta's coming in to kind of not only do his own work in terms of identifying players and beginning kind of talks and kicking off sort of negotiations, Victor Gyökeres being the case in point, and picking up some of the work that the club had already done, which obviously he'll be on board with. So yeah, let's see what else you guys are saying in the chat box. Paul says, "Congrats on the new baby, brother. Thank you so much, mate. I really, really do appreciate it." There was a couple of other people that said the same, and the comments slipped my mind. I'm so sorry, but thank you to all of you. Really, really do appreciate it. Do you know what you can do that I'll thank you for just as much? Leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. That really, really does help. And subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. All of that stuff is really, really helpful if you're listening on Apple. Leave us a review if you're listening on Spotify. Leave us a review. All of that stuff is very, very helpful. Right, get your questions in. Let's do a few questions before I head off, because I do want to sit down and watch the Merseyside derby. Liverpool taking on Everton tonight. There's a nice program of Premier League games tonight as well. You can watch Match of the Day tonight, which I do love a midweek Match of the Day, I've got to say. Paul Nell says, going through IVF myself, it's a blessing, brother. Enjoy. Thank you very much, mate. And wishing you and your partner all the best. Honestly, some people very, very close to me have been through that journey as well. And I know it can be ups and downs, but wishing you all the best. And I'm sure you guys are going to get there and it's all going to be great. So yes, take care of yourselves and all the best with it. And yeah, keep us posted for sure. What else have we got in the chat? Rumble says Milan derby tonight. Yeah, it's the first leg of their Coppa Italia clash. I'll probably flick over to that once Liverpool score. Damien Kelly, this is random. Harry, you getting sick quite often is linked to your missus being pregnant. You're going through it. I've not been sick for a while. to be honest with you. I do get hay fever this time of year. So when I'm a little bit croaky or whatever, it can sometimes be that rather than me being sick. It's more of an allergy. But yeah, I've been all right for a little bit, to be fair. It's normally my kids I get it from, not the wife. My kids go to school and nursery, and you know what little kids are like. They're bogies all over the place and all the rest of it, and they come home and they bring you all sorts. But anyway, DJ Marcus Anthony says, what surprise exit could potentially happen this summer? I think I'm going to say Trossard. I said Trossard a little bit earlier on. I think Jorginho, Partey, and Trossard will go. I think for all the heavy lifting I imagine we're going to do this summer in terms of bringing players in, there is going to be a churn as well. There are going to be players that do move on. There are going to be players that we have to let go. Again, not necessarily because we're going to get huge transfer fees for them. In fact, in the case of Partey and in the case of Jorginho, we're going to get nothing. But it's about bringing the salary sort of structure under control. And obviously, when people leave, that allows you to bring others in. There will be a bump and there will be an increase. When you look at Arsenal's financials, you constantly see those increases, which is to be expected. But yeah, I think Trossard is the one I'm looking at and thinking, you know what, could be time. Could be time. Damien says your eyes were sick. It's not. I've got a sty. I've got a sty in this eye, which is why it's a little bit puffy. It's much better today, by the way. I could barely open it yesterday, but today it's much better. Still looks a bit funny, but yeah, it's much better than it was. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for all your interaction, for your comments, for being with me on this live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. I'm going to see you all very soon on the next one. We'll be back tomorrow with more, or later on today if you're listening to this on Thursday morning. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you all soon. Andrea Berta is cooking, you know. I think it's going to be a pretty exciting summer. Fingers crossed. Anyway, catch you all soon. Goodbye.